Removing fear through action. Good morning, good evening, good night, YouTube. Welcome in whatever time of day it is for y'all. I have a new video for y'all that, it really was about something else, but I figured that this central message was a lot more important. But let's just get straight to it, right? Removing fear through action, right? What does that really mean? Well, what does it mean to remove fear through action? Well, many people, right, have this moment in their brain. They may think of something, like a business idea or talking to a girl or, honestly, whatever the case it may be, whatever it is that you think about, that you may fear, right? Let's say you want to go talk to a girl, right? You first think about the action, and then without even, thinking about doing it, you instantly think, okay, well, it could go this way and this way. And essentially what you're doing is you're giving yourself time to think about all the bad things that could actually happen. So what does it mean to remove fear through action? It means, the first moment that you think of something, your goal is to execute on that idea or that action as soon as possible without giving yourself the time to think about the negative effects. Now, obviously, let's say, we're talking about a business idea here, right? There's a big difference between, giving yourself time to actually measure if it's a good idea or, whether it's a good idea, whether it's not a scam, whether it's actually plausible, the actual mathematics of the business, how much money will go into it. That is all stuff that you need to know, when you're getting into a business, for sure, 1000%. But it's the emotional thought process that we're talking about, not the logical, because actually doing those numbers, actually crunching down on that is action. Okay. So we're not talking about that type of, like hesitation, because essentially it's not really even hesitation. It's actually action. Regardless, we're focusing on the fear that gets created through emotional turmoil of, is it gonna work out? What if I get humiliated in public? All these ideas or these thoughts that you have, when you think of something, like I said, whatever the case it may be. That's what we're talking about. And I actually have the 48 Laws of Power with me right here, because there's a law in here that I really believe goes hand in hand with this, central message. Because yes, we can go in and instantly get to work, and create that, that action and forget about the fear. But if we're not fully prepared, mentally prepared, in pure confidence with ourselves, if we're not moving with confidence in ourselves, that could really affect the way it is that you think, And so I'm not saying that, you have to be perfect when you start, going into, thinking about whatever the case it may be, or like a business or something. You don't have to be perfect. Obviously, people will be a little scared, the first time they do something. And that's why, repetition is important, right? You're going to learn every single time. But this is what you want to strive for, right? Because that way, once you get rid of the timidness, you're working in full confidence with yourself, and you're not acting in fear. You're not, letting fear control you. So that's the two things that you really, really want to get down, right? So let me read it to y'all real quick. Law 28 of the 48 Laws of Power. Enter action with boldness. Now, I'm going to read y'all the judgment. The judgment is essentially just, how the book explains the law, right? So here we go. If you are unsure of a course of action, do not attempt it. Your doubts and hesitations will infect your execution. Timidity is dangerous. Better to enter with boldness. Any mistake you commit through audacity are easily corrected with more audacity. Everyone admires the bold. No one honors the timid. So, what does that mean? Essentially, if you, for example, driving, if you are in a car, right, and you're worrying about, oh my God, what if a car hits me? Oh my God, what if a car swerves into me? Or what if I hit somebody? Your mind is going to be so clouded that you're not even going to be able to properly drive. You're not even going to be able to, think, take those necessary, steps, think clearly without a fogged mind to actually secure the safety of yourself and others, right? Whereas someone that is confident, even if someone may swerve into them on the highway, or even if a pedestrian crosses the road, they're thinking so clearly that they're capable of making decisions on the fly because they're not worried about what ifs. They're worried about the actual thing that they're doing and what is actually going on in front of them. And so what I'm saying is, just to, kind of sum it up, is essentially, the more you are worried about something, the less you're actually focusing on the task at hand. And, that's really, what you want to that's what you want to do, is focus on the task at hand. And so here, I want to read to you some things in the book, and kind of, explain to y'all what it is that you could do to kind of just remove that worry and that fear that you may have when you're trying to get into something or do something. Now, throughout my life, I've done a lot of public speaking, and for quite some time now, I've been able to slowly better, or slowly but surely better my public speaking skills. And actually, that's another reason that I really started this YouTube channel, is because I felt like I was really getting rusty. So, as a person that has gone out there and really stood in front of crowds and spoken to people, I really just, I'm going to give you a couple things that I did, to kind of just negate that fear. And also things that I do on a day-to-day basis that make me feel more confident about myself, that make me feel, not as worried about, oh, what if, people say this or people do that. And, the first thing I want to start with is, just being able to be proud and, be grateful of something that you've done. And how that starts necessarily, you might not like your life right now, but, let's say you start going to the gym. Let's say you start, doing your bed in the morning. These are all simple things that, you might do, but it'll give you more confidence in yourself. You'll feel more accomplished. You'll feel happier about yourself, which, in turn will make you more confident, which in turn, with being more confident, you'll worry less about things because you'll trust yourself more. Because confidence is about trust in yourself. That's really what confidence is about. It's about trusting yourself. It's not about this, fake persona that you put up, It's not any of that. It's about trusting yourself. That's what confidence is. So, when you create a reason for you to trust yourself, that's when, overthinking doesn't really necessarily become a bad habit, but becomes a skill. Your brain becomes a weapon. Honestly, that's the first one. That's the first thing you could do, is just start doing things that you're proud of. Start, actually, and I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, like, yo, I thought this guy was going to help me start getting to that. But honestly, there's really no way for me to help you if you don't want to help yourself. So the first step is wanting to help yourself and actually wanting to be better. And I know that sucks to hear. There's never no secret cheat code. You just want to have to be able to do it yourself, all right? And that's the real truth of the matter, right? I can't really force you to be better. I just can't do that. The saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink it. And so that saying is very true. Like I said, I can't help you if you don't want to help yourself. Regardless, though, the second thing you want to do is, throughout your day, you want to just look at things, or say, okay, what about putting on your shoes, okay? A lot of people, they procrastinate simple things like doing their homework, making their bed, making food. Instead of leaving, the practice to those big tasks, like, speaking to someone that you may like, or going up on a stage, or doing a school project, whatever the case it may be, instead of leading, the practice to those big moments, why don't you practice in smaller, less stakes environments? For example, let's say you got to make food today. Instead of being, I'll do food later, you're going to do the thing you think of immediately. This is a great practice of, how to remove that hesitation, and how to, just, flow, how to just trust in yourself. It's when, let's say you have to make food. instead of going, do I really want to make food right now? Instead of doing that, the second that you think about having to make food, just get it out the way. Just do it. Oh, I gotta make food. Okay, that's what we're doing now. That is how you practice. You know, in no point in time ever has anyone ever practiced in a game, in a finals game. Like, you don't, like, LeBron doesn't practice while he's in the championship, right? Nobody practices while they're in the end game. You do that before you get there. Now, does it serve as practice? Sure, of course. But no one is actively practicing. Like, if someone told you to practice in the finale, why you would think they're stupid. So why do you do that every single day? Why do you wait for these big things, these big moments to happen instead of just practicing on your day-to-day? And that's really one of the most important things that you could do is just, putting on your shoes. Oh, got to put on my shoes. Oh, I got to brush my teeth. Oh, brush my teeth. Stuff that's so small and so simple that you're not even going to think about twice because of the fact that, it's not high stakes. It's not difficult. But, essentially what it is just brainwashing yourself and being more confident and being less procrastinative. This is going to really overall, just make your life a lot better and, make you trust yourself more. And obviously there's going to be harder things, that you may not want to do. For example, like doing your homework. And this is really where that discipline builds, is when, you have a task that you really, really just don't want to do. And you say, okay, I'm just going to do it. And that's how your discipline builds. And that's how, in other scenarios, you train yourself for those bigger, more, stressful moments. That's where the training comes from. But that's essentially it. There was really only 2 points that I wanted to point out to you guys with, just to summarize. The first being building confidence in yourself, actually creating a person that you are capable of trusting. Because if you can't trust in yourself, if there's nothing about you that you can believe in and, trust in and have confidence in, obviously that's not going to come off to anybody else because, to put it simply, if you can't trust yourself, who's going to trust you? If you can't lead yourself, who's going to lead you? And that's the first point. And the second point being, which is a lot more, just kind of, micro training of just when you think of something, just do it. If there's something that you don't want to do it. It's hard to, it is hard to actually do because you need to actively be thinking about it, which is actually a main reason that I really, strongly suggest that if you're a person that is, very procrastinative, delete Instagram, delete TikTok, delete all these apps that, take attention away from yourself, because essentially what happens is they remove the consciousness from your brain because you're so focused on scrolling and whatever the next thing that pops up in front of you is. And that's another, that's actually going to be the bonus tip for today is, delete them damn apps, all right? Seriously, they're not good for you. Unless you have something to do on there, like, post content or whatever the case may be, research. Anything that is not adding to your life, just quit it, okay? Seriously. That's essentially all I had to say for today. If you guys want more of the laws of power or, any specific topic on, whatever the case it may be, like actually, confidence or social skills, anxiety, whatever it is that you guys want me to speak on, please put it in the comments because, I have videos that I want to put out. But if you guys have videos that you want more urgently or want to see, I am, more than grateful to actually putting that out there for you guys. So, let me know in the comments. Please like, please sub. It helps a lot. We want everybody to improve. So, the best we could do is, spread this all across the world. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, good morning, good evening, good night, whatever time of day it is for you guys. I hope you enjoyed. Peace.